orientation webinar. Before I get started, I'm going to share a little bit about Pact and Adoption Alliance and our services. Pact is a nonprofit organization whose mission is to serve adopted children of color. In every case, the child is always our primary client. In order to best serve children's needs, we provide not only adoptive placement services, but also lifelong education, support, and community for adoptees and their families on issues of adoption, identity, and race. Today, I'm going to talk to you about placement, so I'll skip that part of our organization because it'll be covered, and I'll move on to education, support, and community. Education. We know that needs of adoptive families and adoptees don't end with placement. We work to be available to everyone touched by adoption throughout the lifespan by offering ongoing education and support. We support the voices of lived experience with particular emphasis on underserved communities, including adoptees and foster alum of color, as well as first birth parents and adoptive parents of color. Our educational programs include workshops, conferences, and webinars. To highlight just a few, we offer over 24 webinars each year, ranging from subjects like search and reunion to transracial adoption to talking to children about adoption when one or both parents shares the child's race. Webinars are available to anybody. You do not have to adopt through Pact. You do not have to be working with Pact. You can attend webinars without being a Pact member. There is a discount for Pact members. Each year in March, we collaborate with other organizations and nonprofits to host the California Adoption Conference, or CAC, the largest adoption and foster care educational conference in the state of California. If you live in California, again, anybody can attend. And the jewel in our crown is our week-long Pact Family Camp, where over 200 families from across the country join adult adoptees and birth parents in a rich program for adults and children. Due to popular demand, Pact offers 2 camp locations each summer, one in Northern California and one in Vermont. Pact Camp 2018 is starting next week, and California is sold out. Vermont, which is happening in August 2018, still has some spots available. And again, Pact Camp is available to anybody. You do not have to have adopted through Pact. You do not have to have a private infant placement. You can be a foster, international, etc. Pact offers support groups for adopted and fostered tween and teens of color, adoptive parents of color, LGBTQ adoptive parents, parents of adopted adults, first birth parents, and adult adoptees of color. Groups are running locally, and we have Facebook pages for each contingency as well. And community. Pact also connects with the community by offering service training to educators, schools, hospitals, social workers, and therapists, as well as opportunities for families with children of color to meet one another in social settings. More information about all of this and other Pact programs can be found on our website, www.pactadopt.org. Our event tab is super up to date. We always are fixing any changes, addressing any changes, adding new events, so that is the best place to keep your eye on everything. Just a few housekeeping notes for this orientation. All attendees are muted upon entry. To ask any questions, please use the chat box or the question and answer box, and I'll answer as many questions as I can. There used to be the ability for me to unmute. Orientation tends to be a smaller attendance, but I don't believe I'm going to be able to do that. I've done it in the past, but I'm not sure if I can do that on our new platform. This webinar is being recorded, and you will receive the recording via email within 24 hours, so you can go back and listen to anything that might come up. And lastly, as I mentioned, we offer 24 webinars a year. It comes out to basically 2 a month. And our next one is actually tomorrow, Living Open Adoption, Practical Guidance for Making It Work. It is being led by Lori Holden, who is the author of Open-Hearted Way to Open Adoption, which is actually a book that Pact has basically all of our pre-adoptive parents read as they come on board and want to be in Pact's placement program. So we'll go ahead and get started. Here are the banners for some of the things I addressed: our family camp, educational program, adoptive parents of color. Kaleidoscope is our Southern California group. If you're a Pact member, we have our news. And then the top left, it talks about adoption process and placement, which is what we're going to focus on today. So who is Pact? Pact is a nonprofit full-service adoption agency licensed in the state of California. We have been working on becoming a full service adoption agency for many, many years. We were approved in August 2017, but we launched and went public with it just this year, January 2018. So we are now a full service licensed adoption agency, so families can work with us for everything. It used to be different. Families used to have to uh, work with somebody else for their home study. Out of state families, you still need to work with somebody else for your home study, and we will get to that. Pact works within domestic adoption services only. We do not and are not involved with international adoption. We're not Holt, or not, sorry, not Hague accredited. Holt International is a place that you can explore if you're interested in international adoption. As an agency, Pact works in agency to agency placements. So we are the agency here in California, and maybe we get a call from an agency in Texas, and both of those agencies, we work together to ensure that the placement runs smoothly and that everybody is supported. Pact also works within open adoptions. Open adoptions look different for all families, but there are it is all adoptions are going to be some level of open through Pact. If you are a family that's coming to this process thinking you want absolutely closed, Pact is not the right organization for you. In general, you'll be pretty stumped to find an agency. Well, actually, probably most agencies will support you saying closed. You'll be stumped to find expectant parents that are okay with closed due to the knowledge and awareness of adoption and open adoption in particular and how it now works and how it's beneficial for all involved. I'd say about 95% of the expectant parents that are thinking of placing want an open adoption and typically want visits. So for example, Pact has been getting a bunch of calls from an organization or an agency in Louisiana, um, and we've presented our families a bunch of times, but none of our families have been chosen because they all live in California, and the expectant parents are in Louisiana, and they say, "I love this couple, but I want them to be closer because I want open adoption." So it's what expectant parents are seeking, and when they call us, they already are aware and know that it's something that they can ask for and it's something that they want. PACT is an organization whose focus is primarily same race placements with families of color. So we place African American or Black children with African American or Black families, Latino children with Latino families, and so on. We do have a transracial adoption education program. Transracial placements is not a big focus of our placement program, as one of the only, if not the only agency in the country that focuses on serving families of color who are looking to adopt, and expectant parents of color and children of color. Transracial families, so typically Caucasian families adopting children of color, they're welcome to enter our program. They have to go through extensive education before they even enter our placement process, but they are typically looking at a longer wait time, which I will get to. But we do have transracial adoption education, which is available to anybody in the country, and you do not have to adopt through PACT in order to do it. So open adoption is a pretty big one that we get questions about when we have our local orientations or when I take phone calls from parents. So just a few bullet points to think about, especially if you're brand new to this and might be a little scared about open adoption. It's usually the biggest fear I have from pre-adoptive parents. Parents have had well, in this case, once their rights are terminated, the birth parents have had their parental rights terminated. So you are legally, and in all other processes, changing the diapers, doing the feedings, not getting any sleep, raising a kid that's kicking you when they're mad and punching you when they're mad and laughing with you and crying with you, you are the parent. It is involving your child's birth family in a way that feels right for the birth parent, for the child, and for your family. It is direct contact between the adopting family and the birth family. So PACT is not the middleman or the middle person. You have direct contact without any other professional or outside force dictating it or being involved in it. There is semi-open adoption, which is when families will meet each other and exchange some non-identifying information, and then they'll maintain contact through somebody like Pact. There are a few expectant parents that are comfortable with that. They're like, I don't want openness yet. I'd rather you send everything through Pact and I'll go pick it up. Um, but like I said, the majority are looking for fully open. So they remain in close and ongoing contact with you and your child, and it includes visits over the life of the child. As I think I've started talking about, it looks different from family to family. There is no one way to have an open adoption. Open adoption does not solve, fix, cure, or ensure anything or everything. I have families that submit their paperwork and they say, we're going to have an open adoption and the kid's going to be fine because they're going to know everything about themselves. They're going to get all their questions answered and everything's going to be great. They're not going to have any problems growing up and being adopted. Not accurate. Open adoption creates its own, it may solve some problems, like my next bullet point says, but it's also going to create some new ones. Open adoption is like any relationship. Who has a relationship that doesn't change? Open adoption is the same. It ebbs and it flows. There's going to be a difference between openness when the child is 2 months old and when the child is 14 years old. Families need to be flexible, ready for the ebbs and flows of what open adoption is. It doesn't remain static, it changes. Another way that a couple families will think about it is arranged marriages or just marriages in general. If you are married, maybe you can think of somebody on your partner's side where you're just like, oh, that one aunt, I would not hang out with her on my own time. I can't. But she is family, even though she's not blood related, because she's his aunt through his uncle, who's genetically or blood related to him. But she means a lot to him. I can't totally stand her, but I know it's beneficial for my partner. So I'm going to suck it up and I'll see her at the 2 family reunions we have every year. Some families really appreciate that look of, yeah, that's right. I have that one family member who, ooh, I have to take them in doses, but I know it's important to my partner or my mom or my sister or whoever else in my family that they remain in contact with us. So I'll see them twice a year. That's essentially open adoption. You inherit a family. There's some people you're going to love, some people you're not going to love. But what do? You suck it up, you go and see them, and you guys make it through. Or you inherit a family and you love them all and you can't wait to see them and you see them 2 to 4 times a year and it's great and everybody's involved and the child is at the center or your partner, whoever is at the center of whatever example you want to give yourself. That is also a way of what open adoption looks like, right? And your partner's aunt may not co-parent with you. She might give advice and want to say stuff. Same thing with birth parents. They're not usually there to co-parent. They might want to give you some advice and you just kind of take it like you do for all the other people that want to give you parenting advice or lifestyle or eating advice, kind of all of that. And then to reiterate one more time, all Pact adoptions are some version of open. I do get the question often that, okay, so what if the expectant parent doesn't want an open adoption? We will respect their wishes, but again, it's not static. It doesn't mean it is solid. So let's say, let me actually pause. You'll hear me use the term expectant parent and birth parent. At Pact, we call them expectant parents until an adoption has fully occurred. Nobody is a birth parent until their rights have been terminated. They're an expectant parent if they've already given birth but haven't done a placement, their mom or their dad. Nobody is a birth parent until they have signed the paperwork that terminates their rights. So think about that as you start looking at other agencies and they call a 2-month pregnant woman a birth mother. She's not a birth mother. That's an unnecessary title on her. It's a possible level of coercion and it gives her this idea or this stigma of you're less than because you're just a birth mom. So when couples are still pregnant, they are expectant parents. So we might have an expectant parent that calls us and says, I'm due in 2 months, but I don't want any open adoption. I don't want to see the baby, just close. That's what I want. We would respect that, obviously, because we're not trying to coerce or push her or them into anything that they don't want. We will continue to counsel and educate them on what open adoption can look like and how it is beneficial for the child, as we are a child-centered organization. Um, and again, it could change. She could say, I don't want any contact right now. But as with any relationship, she could come back around when the child is 5 or 6 or 17 and say, okay, now I'm ready. There's a lot. that I don't think families totally grasp. You could be a family or a parent that wants an open adoption right away. You want to see birth family 4 days after placement. Um, you want to start setting up monthly visits or whatever it is. They are going to need time. And just because they need time doesn't mean they don't want openness or they don't want ongoing contact. They just carried a child for 9 months. Hopefully, they carry to full term. And then they place that baby with somebody else who's not them or their own family member, and then they're stepping away, and their body is responding to a baby who's not there. So they might not be in a place to be able to respond to you as quickly as you want if you're so go hung and ready for open adoption. I've heard plenty of birth mothers who it takes them anywhere from 3 months to a couple years to finally come back around. They're like, yep, I had a total open adoption plan. This is what we were going to do. And I just could not. I was experiencing my own trauma, my own depression. I couldn't bring myself to jump right into open adoption. But my child's adoptive parents stayed connected with me. And I knew that when I was ready to fully come around, they were there and they were ready. They continued the ongoing connection that we talked about. So be ready for it to ebb and flow and to totally change because it will. I have tons of friends that are birth mothers. I have seen it change with their children from age to location to everything. Um, so open adoption, there's not one way to do it. It doesn't solve and fix everything. It'll solve some, but create new, and it's always changing. And all pact adoptions are some version of open. Going back to the other points about PACT, we work predominantly in same-race adoptions. Same-race adoption is when one or both of the adoptive parents share the race of the baby. The majority of our placements are same-race. We believe same-race placements serve children best because they don't force a child to always have their adoptive status in the public eye. So if you look at the family on the left, they're just going to walk down the street and nobody's going to question everything. They're going to assume that the child was born to those parents. Because essentially, in quotations, they match. So we also qualify or identify interracial couples, one white parent, one black parent, as same race placements if they're adopting an African American child. What we often do is we have the white parent complete some transracial adoption or look into some other stuff because as they walk down the street, if they're not with the parent, that's the person of color, the child's adoptive status is going to be in the public eye, or the child's, it's just going to be in the public eye of like, oh, you don't match. It happens to people that are connected by birth as well. Interracial couples, when the white parent is walking down the street, whether they gave birth to them or not, there's still always that question. So with interracial couples, we do often have the white parent do some readings on transracial adoption. Oftentimes they come to us recognizing like I need to do some work on transracial adoption and what that's going to mean because that's essentially going to be my experience. And we also have heard that from biracial individuals who are born to their family but raised by the white side of their family only. When we hear their experience and their struggle of growing up, it is very similar to the transracial adoptee experience. So we do have interracial couples kind of go through that process. Transracial adoptions, most transracial adoptions, or the common image is white adoptive parents adopting children of color. Families adopting across racial lines need additional education and support, and PACT can help. We are starting to see more, most commonly Asian families, East Asian, South Asian families that are adopting African American or Latinx children, but still the image of transracial adoption is white parents with black and brown children. PACT believes transracial placements work when parents learn to address racial issues directly and are part of a diverse community. And I use this PowerPoint for my in-person orientation, so there is a break for questions. I don't see any coming through the question and answer box, so I'm going to keep moving forward, but remember, that's where you can send them. So choosing your agency or your professional who you want to work with. We talk about this at our in-person orientation because a couple families that come to us are looking at other agencies in the Bay Area as well. Obviously, we would love families to work with PACT, but we also recognize that we might not be the best fit for everybody. So you always want to start with an info session or a consultation to get to know one another better. Usually info sessions or orientations like this are free, so that's probably the best way to go. When it becomes a consultation, there's usually payment involved. So if you know you're saving money for adoption or you just don't have $300, $400, $500 to throw at a consultation, start with an info session, ask about orientations, see if maybe they have their orientation webinar recorded. That's what Pact is going to start to do, is record one and have it available for families when they ask. You want to choose the agency or the professional that meets your goals and needs in the adoption process. How will they work with you? We are experiencing this right now with one of our waiting families who is working with us and is also connected to an adoption facilitator. So if you're thinking of an adoption facilitator, a few heads up. Adoption facilitators tend to be for profit, so their costs and what they charge you is usually $10,000 to 20 something thousand dollars. And then you want to ask how they work with you. So this family that I'm thinking of, they're working with a facilitator. The facilitator charges $16,000, and all the facilitator does is connect the pre-adoptive family with an expectant parent, and then they step away completely and leave it to the pre-adoptive parent to do essentially all the work. So to counsel somebody that they shouldn't be counseling, to navigate a state that they don't know, to figure out who's going to be the work in that state if it's a different state, etc. So for 60, they're charging you $16,000 to just match you with a woman who's considering placing, or a couple, but who haven't received proper counseling, proper adoptions counsel or options counseling, who might not even really know anything about adoption and how much it entails and how much paperwork, etc. So you want to be specific, especially if you're looking at a facilitator. How will they work with you and the expectant parents? That's the next one, how they support and work with expectant parents. What services are they going to offer for the $16,000 that you're paying them? In this instance, this one facilitator is asking for $16,000 and not really doing anything, stepping away. This family, since they are also connected with Pact, we are stepping in to counsel the expectant parent, connect with the state, and ensure that everything is in place and in order. Ask about adoption costs and fees. I'm going to go over what that looks like for Pact later on in this webinar, but do not be afraid to ask specifically, why do you have me paying $8,000 towards a general advertising budget? What is your approach towards advertising? How do you do this process, etc.? Asking about what post-placement support and services are available to birth parents and to adoptive families. So is this an agency that is just going to match you, place you, and then once post-placement is done, they're going to step away and not have anything else for you? Or are they an agency that has a family day every year? There are a couple agencies on the East Coast that do family days, and they have groups for adoptive parents, and they have groups for adoptees, and they have a group for birth parents, as does Pact. We have groups for adoptees, for young adoptees. We have our camp. So you want to ask about what post-placement support looks like. If they don't have it, you're welcome to come back to Pact, because you don't have to adopt through us to access post-placement. But it's just something to think about specifically for birth parents that might be in that area. Are they going to be dropped into complete isolation after placement, or is there some sort of community that they can connect with? And education requirements. I had a family email me the other day that said, we want to make sure that you have really intense education requirements, and Pact does. So you want to also check on that with other professionals that you're working with. How are they educating you? This is about finding families for children, not children for families. So we need to make sure that families are educated and prepared, especially if you are a family considering transracial adoption. Whoever you go work with, are they going to make you watch a 30-minute video and tell you you're okay to adopt a Black child in current America? Or are they going to make you come to Pact and do our BCAC process, which is a 4 to 6 month process? So check on education, specifically transracial, if that is your family makeup. So why Pact? So this part of the orientation is going to get more in depth into us specifically, as opposed to what I started with, which is more just kind of a general overview of adoption terms and adoption stuff in general. As we've said, Pact serves adopted children of color by providing not only adoptive placement, but lifelong education support and community for adoptees and their families, both birth and adoptive, on matters of adoption and race. Children are always at the center of our work. Like I said, we're looking for families for children. We're not out here looking for little babies or looking for children for you. We're looking for families for children. Ethics, transparency, and honesty are always at the forefront of our work and our approach. We address the intersections of race and adoption, and we have a strong emphasis on preparing families for adoption and supporting families after adoption. Another piece that makes Pact unique is, as far as we know, we're probably the only agency placement program that is run by direct triad members. So the placement program is myself and my coworker. I am an adult adoptee, and my coworker is an adult adoptee and a birth parent. She placed her daughter for adoption about 17 years ago. So both of us are adopted, and she's a birth parent. So we come to this work personally and professionally, which impacts how we work with expectant parents that come to us, how we work with pre-adoptive parents, how we educate families, etc. So I'm pretty sure we're the only placement program that has direct triad. That's not okay. There are a lot of placement programs that are run by adoptive parents, predominantly white adoptive parents. They are direct triad members, but adoptees and birth parents are the two that are most directly impacted by placement and the two voices that are the least heard. So that is who runs our PACS placement program. Most other agencies you come across, you'll find out that the CEO or the head or the director or the placement team are run by adoptive parents, predominantly white adoptive parents. If they're not white adoptive parents, they're typically just social workers or counselors that might have a direct connection to adoption, which is what brings them to this work. And our organization, yes, Pact was founded by two white adoptive parents about 20 something years ago now. Our focus is supporting underserved adoptive families. As I said before, most of the agencies in this country, you can learn their pages. They have about 250 white families and maybe about 4 adoptive parents of color or adoptive families of color. Our focus is serving underserved adoptive families. Adoptive parents of color, LGBTQ-headed households, and single parents. Of all the families waiting, they are all families of color. I do not have any Caucasian families seeking transracial placements at this time. So now going into Pact's home study process. If you are a local Bay Area, San Jose, Petaluma, I believe Clear in Sacramento, and maybe out towards Stockton and Fresno. So definitely the Northern California. We're clear on a couple of counties. I know we go up to Yolo County, the Sac area, and down to San Jose. So if you are a family that lives within this NorCal region, you can work with us for everything, and we can conduct your home study. So our home study process is we use the structured analysis family evaluation, or more commonly known as SAFE, the SAFE home study methodology. The website is safehomestudy.org. The reason why PACT decided to do this is, unfortunately, private infant adoption doesn't really have a streamlined process. Agencies can kind of do what they want with home studies, with fees, with anything they want to do. And we decided to use the SAFE methodology because it is evidence-based practice. It is the Children's Consortium. It's based here in the North Bay area. And like essentially we have somebody that we report to and that oversees us. Most other private agencies don't. They can just do what they want. Safe home studies are now becoming more common and more frequent in the foster to adopt process. So if you've started to look into that or you've done that before, you might have had a safe home study. It's spreading across the country pretty quickly for all foster agencies and foster care programs. It's being used in Canada. And then there are a handful of private adoption agencies that are starting to use SAFE. There's one in Colorado that I know of. Bethany Christian Services around here has started to use SAFE. So it's just It's a nice format to follow. We have people that we essentially can report to. So if somebody had a grievance or was like, you didn't do this right on my home study, SAFE will say they followed the SAFE process. They did everything as was designated in their training. Whereas other agencies that just kind of create their own process to a home study are probably missing on some important points and then don't really have somebody to report to or somebody that can oversee them. The Safe Home Study, all visits occur in your home. Other private agencies, they have to do one in your home, but other ones they make you come to their office or they do it on the phone. For Safe, we go to your home or your residence for every visit that we have. So it keeps you comfortable in your own space. The SAFE paperwork is the questionnaire 1 and 2, and then reference letters. And then additional forms that you're going to need are your background info, birth certificate, marriage certificate, divorce if applicable, medical clearances, fingerprint clearances, employment verification, and financial and tax info. Those are very specific to SAFE. These are also in general what everybody's going to go through for a home study process and a home study visit. You're going to need also like 2 forms of ID. TB test clearance is pretty common across the board. Fingerprint clearance is everybody, that's common and across the board. And your financial information and tax will be reviewed as well. So it can be, um, it can be pretty intrusive, which can suck, but it's also just kind of the process to ensure that homes and families are safe. So for those families that are outside of Northern California, are there a lot of home study methodologies? Any others we should be aware of or watch out for? As far as I know, there isn't. So if you live out of state or out of Northern California, so if you're in LA or San Diego, you're going to have to use a full service license agency in your area to do your home study. So when you call them, you can just say, how do you do your home study process? SAFE is the only methodology that I'm aware of. Everything else is kind of just agencies know what they have to ask and what they look for. So I know that everybody's generally going to have you do an autobiography. You're going to, all the additional forms on this slide are going to be asked, and then they'll come interview you. They'll ask about drug and alcohol history and/or current use. They'll ask about mental health history. So when we became an agency, my supervisor did research on like what is the best home study methodology, and SAFE kept coming up and kept coming up, which is why she went ahead and did it. And there wasn't really any other thing, right? It's really just they can kind of create what they want. Here's a checklist of what you need to cover and then cover that. There are home study agencies that are using SAFE but are actually not certified in it. I don't know how you can check on that, but I do know that it's happening, that they'll have SAFE paperwork, but they actually haven't gone through the SAFE training, which is very particular and specific. But just keep an eye on, like an eye out for it. You're typically doing a la carte. These people know how to do home studies, so it's not like it's not going to be a big deal. Yeah, they'll walk you through it. Home studies typically take 2 to 3 months. Let me pop to my next slide. So on the left, if you're, it should say more like Northern California resident, and then on the right, out of state or out of area families. So for our placement program, everybody starts with a consultation. It's either pre-placement, that's for our families of color, or BCAC, which is for families considering transracial. So you could be a white family or you could be a family of color considering transracial placement. That's where everybody starts when they come to Pact. You have that one of the consultations that falls within your family makeup. If you're local to NorCal, your next step would go into the Safe Home Study process with us, which is about 2 to 3 months. That's the common timing for any home study with anybody, about 2 to 3 months. For out of state or out of area, you need a home study by a full service licensed agency in your home state. And again, you can call and say, what is your a la carte charge? I'm going to be working with somebody else for outreach and placement. And I can talk a little bit more about that. Everybody will drop into education, webinars, books, conferences while their home study is being completed. While their home study is being completed, they're also going to do their Dear Expectant Parent letter. I have a webinar on that I did earlier this year that's recorded that I can send to families once they become Pact clients. That'll help them get that set up. Then you go as an active waiting family and we begin presenting your profile. Once you are chosen, we call it the match period. You're matched with an expectant family, expectant parent or expectant couple. Once you have a placement that happens and their rights they've signed the paperwork, we know this is moving forward. You will have post-placement visits, and the process, if your home study is with Pact, we will do it. If you're with your other agency in your area, that's when they will come back in and do post-placement with you. And then Pact offers post-placement support, education, and community for anybody, no matter where they live. And again, also checking with your area agency if they have any post-placement support, education, or community. Excuse me, I have this lingering cough, so I keep muting myself so I don't cough in your ear. Any questions? I know the chat box is working and it looks like one is coming through. So I'll see if that comes through. And then if not, I'm going to go more into specifics on who Pact works with, both expectant parents, wise, adoptive parents, and so on. Ooh, Santa Cruz. I will have to check on that. I think we might be cleared to go down to Santa Cruz because so when we became an agency, they say you're clear in these specific counties. So I'll just have to, let me give myself a note and you can also email me. I'll give you my email at the end. I'll have to see if that's within our range. If not, we've heard from an agency up here who's based in San Francisco that you can contract with social workers down in LA or Santa Cruz or San Diego if they're SAFE certified. So we would have to make sure we have somebody who's SAFE certified. But yeah, I can check on that. I don't have the counties offhand. So specifics, the expectant/birth parents that Pact works with. Most are in their 20s, but what I've tended to see most recently is more late 20s to mid 30s. Most are single parents already. They're parenting one, two, or another amount of children, multiple children. Unplanned pregnancy means stress, so denial is part of the process, right? There might be, but I have never met anybody who is like, let me get pregnant, carry this child for 9 months, and then place it with somebody else. I have never met somebody that's their plan and their intention. When I have, it's usually, or I've heard about it, it's usually somebody who, like, essentially they're a surrogate. Like they have a friend who they know can't get pregnant. So they're like, dude, just get me pregnant and then I'll place my child with you. But otherwise, these are unplanned pregnancy. These women are in denial. So they're not going to prenatal yoga and eating their kale and tofu. They are living their life wherever they are living. If they don't want to believe that they're pregnant, they might still be engaging in any activities that most parents or pre-adoptive parents especially would consider not healthy or harmful. But again, it's their process and they're definitely in a state of denial. So they might be like, I'm not really pregnant. I'm going to keep drinking, or I'm going to keep smoking, or I'm going to keep taking this substance. They are hoping to improve their life and that of their child. We definitely come across plenty of women that are, this is my sophomore year of college. This was not in my plan. I'm on an athletic scholarship. I don't want to lose that. I just graduated college and got into my top nursing school, and a baby's going to throw a wrench in that. So most of the families that we've worked with recently are, they have stuff in order and lined up, and they don't want to jeopardize that, right? They're hoping to improve their life and be set. Like I said, social drinking, cigarette smoking, marijuana use are common. In terms of drinking, everybody, or I don't want to generalize, but I feel like the general population understands the impacts of drinking. So what we do see is we see that women who have been taking alcohol are, they know to stop. they know that social drinking and drinking in general is going to really impact the fetus. So drinking we see stops pretty quickly. Like when they call us, they might say something like, I had a few drinks before I knew I was pregnant. I'm so sorry. I stopped as soon as I found out. So that's usually in the first trimester. Cigarette smoking, super common, not so easy for them to quit. What we see is a significant decrease in cigarette use. And marijuana, especially in California and other states where it is legal and or more common to be used, we're seeing it more and more and more. Again, they're not able to quit. They still use, and the baby might be born with marijuana in their system. But so far, research and studies have shown that marijuana is not as uh, impactful or not as negative a substance to have like alcohol or cocaine or heavier drugs. There are some women that tend to use heavier drugs. Part of this process for you, part of your education is going to be figuring out what are we open to? Are we open to these heavier drugs? Can we really handle that? We ask families to think about what's in your family history, right? Like families that call us and say, absolutely, totally healthy, nothing wrong, no exposure, no mental health, no this, no that, a pristine, pristine, healthy baby. Again, we're not here looking for babies or children for families. We're looking for families for children. Um, open and welcoming of a child in all parts of them. So we ask families to look into their past history. Like I had a family that originally came forward and said, no heavy drugs, no this, no this, no this. And then we actually had a mother who was interested in them, but she was using, I believe, cocaine. And they only took a day to think about it, but one of the parents realized, she was like, you know what? There is addiction in my genetic family. My sibling is a drug addict. So had we been able to have children by birth, this is something that could have popped into our children's genetics no matter what. So why should we turn that away on a child that's not connected to us by birth? So they moved forward with the placement. The baby had a few complications, like in the first month, it was really just difficulty going to the bathroom and maybe a little fussy. Now the baby is going to be 3 in a month. And she is she's rock solid. She's healthy. She's crazy personality, like so fun, really animated, just a really great kid. I know her. I still see her all the time. Um, so that was a baby born with a significant substance in her system, and now she's thriving. Is it going to impact later on? Might be. We never know. Were you going to have a pristine baby at birth if you were able to have a child by birth? Yeah. Would something change later on? Possibly. We don't know. Mental health usually sets in, especially uh, like late teens, early 20s. So even if you had a pristine baby at birth, you never know what's going to change. So families that are like, I don't want nothing in their family history, they have to be perfect. You're going to wait a very, very long time for that. Look back at your family. Is there depression, anxiety, and ADHD? Great. Then you're probably going to be open to families that have that in their history. Um, do you know that you can handle cocaine addiction from in a birth parent and a baby possibly with that? Great. If not, also great. We don't want you to just say yes to all these things and then get a situation that you really can't handle. But definitely think about what it means, especially parents that want like totally healthy, nothing wrong. It's, in my opinion, that's wishful thinking, and you're going to wait a very long time to get that sort of situation. And then the expectant and birth parents that we work with or that call us are commonly seeking families that will share their child's racial makeup. So oftentimes what we see is that they've called other agencies and the other agencies are showing them only white families, are telling them that black people don't adopt, um, are saying all sorts of things. I should write a book on what I have heard agencies tell expectant parents, especially women of color. So they'll call us typically around like month 7 or 8 because everybody else they've worked with is just showing them all these white families when all they've asked is for a black family. Or a white family that lives in a more diverse area, or a white family that is already parenting a kid of color. So they'll, when they call us, they're commonly seeking something different than what they've been shown, and then they tend to come to us later on in their pregnancy because they haven't been able to find what they're looking for previously. The specifics about the children that are placed, Pact is infant placement. We don't do the placement of older children. We get calls about them, but it's typically parent or parents is in a state of crisis. And they're just like, I don't want to parent this kid right now, right? Like you have a 1.5 or 2 year old just screaming off at you, I don't want this child, so they'll call us. We provide them counseling and support. They calm down and then they realize, I did not mean it. I was just in a state of panic. So if you're looking for older children, that's not who we place. We do get calls and we do have families that are open to some older kids, but it's our placements are typically right at birth or a few days, maybe a few weeks or a month or two old. 97% of the babies placed are of African descent, so both birth parents are Black, one birth parent is Black, biracial, multiracial children with at least one Black parent or definitely African Black in there. About 2% of the babies placed are Latinx. We don't see that many Latino placements through us. When we do, they tend to be super sudden. So the parents are undocumented and they wait until they give birth to place the baby because they're just scared of. I think everybody's kind of general understanding or general thinking of adoption is that it's all foster care and the state and the government are involved. So undocumented individuals are a little cautious about reaching out while they're pregnant. So they'll wait until they give birth. And we tend to see that with Latinx birth parents. About 1% are Asian, Native, or other. We do talk about that on our website that we serve that population, but it's just a low percentage that gets placed. I do not have any families right now that are waiting that are Asian parents. I would love to have some just in case we get phone calls regarding Asian infants, but it's not that common. I say that, and actually the last two calls we took were a Filipino child and a Taiwanese child. Neither went on to placement, but they called and started asking questions, and we were like, sorry, we don't have any Asian families. So they were going to have to think of transracial placements. But it's not a big percentage. Pact sees, and in general across the country, it's not a big percentage that we see. There are definitely other agencies across the country that have a bigger percentage of Latinx children that they see, but Pact just doesn't tend to see that often. It might change now that we're a full agency and we can do more work, but it's just been pretty low. And I've been here for about 6 years now, and I've only done the placement of maybe 2 Latinx children, and then everybody else has been a Black or biracial infant. About 90% are born healthy, so there's no, I should put healthy in quotations, there's no positive tox screen. There's nothing in their system. They've scored really well on the APGAR scale. Yeah, and then there's about 10% that might have marijuana or cocaine or something else in their system, but about 90% of all the babies we've placed have no positive tox screen. Other specifics about children, we do not allow gender selection. We are a child-centered child welfare organization. By allowing gender selection, it leans dangerously close to baby shopping. And it also leans dangerously close to unnecessary gender things being placed on a child. Like, I'll get a call from families that are like, hi, I have 3 boys and I really want a little girl, because they're imagining that the little girl is going to put on a tutu and have tea time. But if she's being raised with 3 brothers, she might rather punch you in the face and slam you in the mud, and kind of do that typical boy stuff in quotations or typical girl stuff. And we don't support these unnecessary gender binary stuff that might get put on infants, on kids that have no say in what's going to go on. So we do not allow gender selection. I always get a handful of parents that read our handout on it and they say, oh, great, yeah, we totally support that, but we still really want a boy. We do not allow gender selection. About 95%, maybe 98% of the time, once you're called about a possible match, you're going to know the sex of the baby. And then there's a tiny percentage where you don't know because, one, the expectant parents don't want to know either, and they want it to be a surprise for the adoptive parents, or 2, they didn't know they were pregnant, until they give birth or until like a month before, and then they don't want to get attached, so they don't want to know the sex. The other is for sometimes if they don't know they're pregnant, they're not taking any prenatal care or haven't gotten any services or support, so they don't know as well. And I should put a bullet point on there. Let me give myself a note. Prenatal care is not always a guarantee. So also as you enter adoption, starting to do research on how comfortable are you with babies that may or may not have had prenatal care, right? Like all the vitamins and kind of all the stuff that um, society or people think that pregnant women should do. There are probably expectant parents out there that are not doing it. They don't have access. They don't have time. They're in denial. They don't know they're pregnant. Stuff like that. They don't have the money to go pay for the copay. They live in an isolated area and there's no Planned Parenthood for them. All sorts of things that are going to come into play. Specifics on our adopting parents or pre-adoptive parents. 98% of placements are with same-race families, so one or parents of color with similar or racial ethnic heritage to the child. We routinely work with couples, singles, and LGBTQ or queer identified families. Transracial adopters get additional training as part of their adoption process. Our pre-adoptive parents tend to range from 30 to about 45 years old. I do have a few in their 20s. They tend to be parents that have chronic illnesses and they know that trying to start a family through birth is just not going to be possible given their chronic conditions. So they come to adoption right away, like after they get married in their mid to late 20s. But the average range is about 30 to 45 years old, maybe more like 35 to 45. Excuse me, many will be first-time parents. Some come to us with children by birth, and some come to us with children by adoption that they might have adopted through somebody else, and then they come to Pact for their second adoption. Our specifics with placement, I have about 10 to 20 waiting families at a time. Right now, I believe I'm at 10. And then I have about 3 to 5 waiting in the wings or on deck. They're waiting for their home study to be done, and they'll be ready to go active like by September. Um, so through Pact, we have families that are in pre-placement consultation. That's a lot. Those are families that just come in, meet with our family of color specialists, start getting some education. Then the 3 to 5, sometimes it can be more like maybe 4 to 8 waiting in the wings, have become our official client, but they're waiting for their home study to be done either through Pact or through somebody else. We do have an age requirement. Pre-adoptive parents will age out of our placement program on their 51st birthday. So if you're a two-parent family, the youngest parent, when they turn 51, if you still have not had a match or placement, unfortunately, we stop presenting your profile. Our age requirement came as a result of direct feedback from expectant parents that can do the math. I have families all the time that email me or call me and say, well, I'm 57, but I'm going to send you my echogram or whatever, the one that reads the heart. I'm going to send you my daily meal plans, my daily physical workout. So you'll see that I'm really more like 45. That's great, but expectant parents can do the math. And if they place with you at 57, you're going to be in your early 70s when the kid is a snotty-nosed teenager. And they don't want their kid to go through 2 losses, right? The child has lost their birth family. Even if there's open adoption and everybody has ongoing contact, there is still a significant trauma and a significant loss to the adoptee. So they've had that. And then let's say their super healthy 57-year-old parent at time of placement is now 73 and some stuff has taken a turn and they're dying on the child's 16th birthday. Not ideal. So birth parents can do the math. And a lot of them will also say, look, my mom is only 48 and I don't even want to place with her. So why would I place with a stranger who's 57? So that's where we have our age cutoff. As you do your research, there will be agencies that don't have age cutoffs. Not totally sure how ethical that is, but again, you'll learn and find out and ask them why do they not have an age requirement. If you're interested in the foster care program, I don't believe they have an age requirement. I don't think legally they're allowed to because there's such a need for foster families. I think if you're over a specific age, they might not allow infant placement with you. So it might be an older child, but foster care, as far as I know, does not have age requirement like Pact does. We do get regular calls from other adoption agencies or professionals interested in our waiting families of color. As you've heard me say throughout, most agencies, lawyers, facilitators, everybody on their waiting family list is probably about 95% white families, and then a very low percentage of families of color. So we'll get calls from agencies that are like, I'm working with a woman, she wants black families to look at. I don't have any. Can you send the families that you have? When we get calls from professionals, we cannot control their costs, and those tend to range 30,000 or more. The range I've seen lately is about 30,000 to $55,000 from other professionals. Most commonly, lawyers, facilitators, and LLC or for-profit agencies. Other nonprofit adoption agencies are still more in the 20,000 range. Um, so I'll go over what Pact fees look like, but that's what you'll see kind of across. And if we get a call from somebody else and we can't control their fees, then you're looking at a higher cost adoption. As we are now a full agency, we are gaining more exposure to local hospitals and programs within the Bay. So my coworker and our agency supervisor has gone out and spoken with the NICU, the postpartum, I think they call it like maternity, motherhood wings, basically any social worker that is directly involved with expectant parents or parents that have given birth. Social workers that are designated to the PEDS or the NICU wings or labor and delivery wings. We've gone up to Vallejo, here in Oakland, San Jose, San Francisco. She'll be at Antioch later this week. So we're getting out there a lot more and getting more exposure to local hospitals and programs. There's a clinic in San Francisco that works with abortion, and they often get women that are past the time that they can have an abortion, and they're going to be referring all those women to Pact if those women are interested in considering adoption. So having become an agency, we're now getting out there a lot more, which has started to increase the number of calls we get. Calls do not always lead to full placements, but we're definitely starting to get a lot more activity. I heard from another agency in the Bay Area that they're a lot bigger and they've been an agency for years and have done a lot more placements. They say basically for every 10 calls they get from pregnant and expectant parents, only one leads to a full adoption placement. I tallied up our numbers at the end of last year for like the last 4 years, and it was basically the same for us. It was like 1 out of every 10 calls resulted in a placement. So next on specifics, and I've talked about it before, just to reiterate. Transracial adopters are individuals who wish to adopt across racial lines, can be wonderful to parents to children who do not share their race if they are willing and capable of supporting their child's heritage and identity, if they are willing to do the work. We have families that have moved from middle of nowhere, Maine to downtown Oakland, California because they recognize the safety and the development of their child was at risk living in isolated upstate Maine. So they moved themselves to Oakland, California, because they wanted to support their Black children, recognizing that Maine is very extremely minimally diverse. It is essential for families to have strategies that ensure that their lifestyle does not result in racial or cultural isolation for their child, as I just mentioned. And Pact often works with families who are adopting transracially by providing education and preparation for the journey of transracial adoption, even while those families use other agencies or adoption organizations to complete their placements. We're starting to get a lot more of that. I'm getting calls from white families across the country that say, I love your mission. I support what you do. I recognize I'm never going to get chosen, but my agency is only making me watch a 30-minute video, and I know that that's not enough. I know that racism exists, white privilege, white fragility, race matters. I can't just watch this 30-minute video and in good conscience adopt a child of color. So I'm getting a lot more families that are calling us to do our BCAC process, but adopt through their agency in their home state. Uh-oh. Oops, hold on. Okay. Any questions coming up at this point before I get into more of our fees? And it's 12 o'clock, so I have about 30 minutes. Okay. So the next, the biggest questions I always get are open adoption, I'm scared, or I don't want to do it, or I know it's best, so can you help me? Then I always get the fear or the question of I'm never going to be chosen. Um, and I can't answer that fully of will you ever be chosen, because if you are somebody or a family who just gets impatient and you can't wait 3 years and you stop the process, we never know, right? Like if had you stayed with it, you might have been chosen. It could have been a long time, and I'll talk about that. But in terms of will you never get chosen, if you're 49 years old, you're going to age out pretty quickly from our program, so you might never get chosen in that respect. But if you stick with it, all of our families that have stuck with it have had placements through Pact and or the other professional that they're working with. The families that just can't handle it and can't handle the wait time and the unknown, they stop the process. So then I can't answer will they get chosen or not. And then the next one is always money, 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 which we understand. Unfortunately, adoption is a business. There have been agencies that are shutting down because they rely on placement only. And as they're not doing placements, there have been a decrease in placements. They're losing money. Pact sees a decrease in placements as a success because we strongly believe in family preservation and adoption kind of as a not like a last choice, but adoption's kind of like you've looked at everything. Maybe you don't believe in abortion or you missed the cutoff or you were going to go do it, but you just couldn't. And we've had women like that. Maybe you've looked into your family, you've asked your siblings, your parents, your aunts, your uncles, friends, anybody to help you. And then that's really you can't. So adoption is what you're looking at. So to us, we absolutely support family preservation. We counsel expectant parents on how can they keep their family intact and not have to do a placement. But obviously we're here if that's what they have to do. If they have to move forward to a placement, that's what we're here for. Um, so as we don't treat this as a business, finance is offered on a steep sliding scale. We collect information that gives us an unbiased idea of your income, your assets, and your ability to fund an adoption. So tax returns, employment verification, and you fill out a financial form. We look at everything. Do you have a rental property? Do you have this and that and whatever else you might have? For families who the fee will be determined by gross income. For those who have assets, including property beyond the home they live in and or cash/stocks or other investments, we look at net worth to determine where you fit on the scale. And gathering financial information is a requirement for the home study process. We have had a few families that try to skirt around and put themselves at a lower bracket when in fact they're making $500,000 a year. So you can't skirt around it because any home study agency you work with is required to access your most recent tax return info. And some of them will ask for specific bank deposit forms. Pact does not do that, but there are some agencies that I know go through that process. So this is just for our fees. Pact case management fee ranged from $1,000 to $10,000, determined by a sliding scale, and it's divided into two payments. Families that work with Pact for the safe home study process, you will also have, so you'll have your home study fee, your case management 1 and case management 2. You'll have your legal paperwork fee, and then you'll have post-placement supervision. All of those for Pact are determined on a sliding scale fee. So it's not just one, everybody's home study is going to cost $2,000, everybody's post-placement is going to cost $4,000. It's determined on your scale. So you'll see that higher end families that make over $300,000 are paying $4,500 for a home study. Home studies in general range from $15,000 to $3,000. You'll see for Pact that if you make over 300K, your study is 4,500. But in the long run, once you add everything in together, you're still paying significantly less than you would pay to other agencies. We also, all of this is in our understanding Pact fees. The higher end also helps to underwrite some of the lower end. We're looking for families for children. We're not here to make adoption available only to those that can totally afford it and are not going to take a crunch. So we work with families whose income is 75 to 100,000, families whose income is 150 to 200, families who make over 300. The image and stereotype of adoption is that it's wealthy white people that are adopting, and that's not what Pact is about. So we have our steep sliding scale. All adoptions will incur additional fees if everything is handled through Pact. Everything, your home study, the baby's born at Highland Hospital, and we do everything. You will know what your full cost of your adoption is, give or take like $2,000, possibly more. And all that will be on the next slide. If you don't live here, and then we also don't end up working with the expectant mom here, but from another agency, you're going to have those agency fees. You have your home study agency fees. You have legal fees, travel expenses, pregnancy, birth parent expenses, post-placement counseling, ICPC. ICPC is the Interstate Compact for the Protection of Children, and it applies when babies are born across state lines. So if you're in Santa Cruz and the baby's born in Vegas, ICPC is going to apply. If you're in Santa Cruz and the baby is born in Eureka, it doesn't apply because that's still within the state of California. What I've typically seen are $25,000 to $50,000 above and beyond Pact fees when it's a non-California adoption and it's not through us directly. It's a little confusing. I'm happy to answer any questions and break it down a little more. The next slides might help. But essentially, if Pact can do everything, you will know, yep, okay, this is what I pay for the legal paperwork and the advisement. This is what I pay for post-placement. My total cost is going to be $17,500. It might jump up to 19 because I have birth parent expenses, but for the most part, my range is going to be $17,000 to $20,000 if Pact handles everything. If Pact does not handle everything, you will know what you owe Pact, which will range anywhere from that 1 to that 10. But then you're looking at likely to be 25 to 50 above and beyond. We get a lot of calls from Catholic charities, and they charge 25,000 for everything. So that's more than what a Pact adoption would cost for even our higher end families. So what families do in Pact's placement program is you consider what you can do, right? So you're going to know what your Pact budget is. So you're going to know, I'm just going to use families that make 200 to 250,000 a year. Their set Pact budget for a full adoption is going to be about 17.5, maybe more like 19.5 to 20,000 because of birth parent expenses. So you know that, right? You're like, perfect. We've got $22,000 saved. It falls well within Pact's range. We're good to go. Then if you realize, well, we do want to be presented to other agencies, like if somebody calls us from Michigan, like we want our profile to be presented, do you have that 22 or can you bump it up higher? Because out-of-state agencies are charging higher and charging more. You review your budget with me, you set your firm budget, and I never present you with anything above and beyond. If you tell me that your set is 25,000 and I get a call about a situation that's going to be 35,000, I'm not going to present you. That is $10,000 above your budget. If you're set at 25, but you know you can go up to 27, I'll present you. Your budget is never set in stone. You can change it at any time. I have families that are like, we got a raise. We went to the casino. Our families gave us money. Whatever. We opened a rental place, and so now we fall in this bracket, but we also have this much more money. Your budget is not set in stone, so you can change it at any time. Got a question. Can Pact provide counseling for out-of-state expectant parents if they're not working through another agency? Absolutely. So those are the two, and I didn't put that bullet. There are a couple different ways that expectant parents can come to us. One, and what we most commonly see, is an agency calls us. The agency is already working with that expectant parent. They're not really going to let us do a lot of counseling or work with her or them. I always hate to say it because I'm an adoptee myself, but basically adoption is a business and these agencies don't want to lose money. So they don't want to lose that expectant parent. Um, Even if they have to get an outside family to place with, they just don't want to lose, and they don't want to lose that number, right? Like they can say, oh, we worked with, even if they didn't place with a Bethany family, we still worked with that expectant parent and we can add that to our number of successful placements. So that might be the way they look at it. That's what we commonly see. Expectant parents can call us totally on their own, and that happens a fair amount as well. They find us on the website, they do a Google search, or they see a pamphlet of information, and they can just absolutely call us on their own. That is, I hate to use it, but that's essentially the better slash best way for it to happen. A couple reasons why. If there is a pregnant woman living down in Santa Cruz who calls Pact, we're her first point of contact, and we will provide full options counseling, work with her on what it's going to look like, what it's going to mean. She would then be able to do everything through us because she's local. So it would fall within Pact's fees for all of our families. If she calls us from Arizona on her own, that's also helpful because then we can determine the agency that's going to work with her. So we might know, ooh, this agency in Tucson is going to charge our adoptive families $14,000, but this agency in Phoenix is going to charge our adoptive families $4,000. Um, so yeah, expectant parents can totally call us on their own, and it's almost better because then it helps us keep within budget for our families. And then we also feel better because we know that we feel good about the counseling and education that we're providing for them. We're not doing coercion. We're not promising them an apartment and a car and a whole bunch of other stuff. There are expectant parents out there that that's what they want. They will go with the first ad they see on Google um, because they're promised a car and an apartment and stuff like that. And then there are other expectant parents who they don't care about that. They just want to feel supported and make sure that they find a family that will accept them and their child that they want to place. Yes, so the expectant parent, do they have to go through an agency in their home state? Yes and no. There does need to be somebody on the ground. We don't want to leave this expectant parent or couple just on their own to fend for themselves. And legally, there has to be somebody to make it an agency-to-agency placement. So I'll just use Oasis Adoption. They're down in, I think, Phoenix, the Phoenix area. So let's say a woman calls us who lives in Phoenix. And she says, I found your website. I found that you have a couple that are Mexican American and Native, and they speak Spanish. I really want to place with them. What do I have to do? Susan here and or myself will do all of the counseling with her. We'll gather her information. She'll do our paperwork. She'll become our client. We'll connect her with any supports that she needs, and then we'll connect her with our family. So we'll do basically everything. But legally, for the baby to leave Phoenix to come to the family here in Oakland, we need somebody in Phoenix on the ground. We know Oasis out in Phoenix. So we would call Oasis and say, we're working with a woman who's 8 months pregnant. Here's the paperwork that she signed for us. We've been working with her for 2 months. She's connected with one of our families. Can you be the on-the-ground agency slash social worker that can work with her? They typically have their process. They have to follow Arizona state law, so they will go meet with her. It's usually about once. We always let them know when they call us and they're out of state. We always let them know there is going to be somebody that we have to come to you on the ground. We just can't fly to you. We can be your main point, but they're going to have to meet you in person to go over kind of Arizona paperwork and stuff like that. So yeah, Oasis will step in. They usually meet with her maybe once or twice. And then depending on their protocol, Oasis might be the agency that's at the hospital when she gives birth. Otherwise, it's usually just the adoptive family and the birth family that are at the hospital together with a hospital social worker who's on call. But oftentimes when it is out of state, that agency, and Pact does it too. We just had a placement in March. We went to the hospital. We don't leave our families to like fend for themselves, but if it's out of state, we'll also see if that agency can send the social worker to kind of be at the hospital with everybody involved. But yeah, so legally, she has to be connected with an an agency in her home state. There are some states, Alabama, they don't really have a lot of adoption agencies, but what they have are just independent social workers and then lawyers who step in. We experienced that about a year ago. Um, so we just asked around, called people, and they were like, this is the woman that you should send to meet with this expectant parent. She's great. Everybody trusts her. So there always does have to be somebody on the ground in that state to work with them. And adoptive parents are then responsible for whatever those fees are going to look like. And they range, like I said, from 2,000 to like 18,000. Okay, this is really tiny, but I can email you, and if you already have our packet of information, you'll have seen understanding Pact fees, and you'll have seen the breakdown. You'll see the home study fee for California residents. Case management fee 1 and 2 is for everybody. That applies for everybody. Legal fee is if applicable. So you could live in Arizona, but the baby is born here, and Pact does advisement, relinquishment, legal paperwork. You would then be responsible for that fee because we did it here with the birth parents. But your home study and post placement will be your agency in Arizona or Idaho or wherever you are. So case management fee in one applies to everybody. The other ones are only if applicable. So you'll get a sense of kind of what's going to apply to you. These are just our fees. Sometimes families look at this and they're like, "Ooh, an adoption through Pact is only going to cost me $8,000." No, that's just for our work. You have to add on all the other fees that you're going to be facing. Case management fee 1 is due with your application after you've had your pre-placement consultation and you decide, I want to become a Pact waiting family. You owe us that fee 1. Fee 1 continues to roll over. So if you have a broken match, so you're matched with somebody who's 8 months pregnant and then right before birth she decides she wants to parent, so the match is broken, your fee 1 is just going to keep rolling over. You don't have to repay it. Fee 2 is due at placement, and that is only if the placement comes through Pact. So if you're working with us and your home study agency in Arizona, and Arizona has a placement, and we don't do anything, you don't owe us that fee 2. So I'll use this family we're working with right now. I have a family that's working with Pact and also another facilitator that they've paid money to and that they're working with. So like I said in the beginning, the facilitator in this case, all they're doing is connecting the, let's see, this mom is due in like a month, 5 weeks, 5 or 6 weeks. So they're connecting this 8-month pregnant, or right at the end of 7 months pregnant, 33 weeks. They are connecting this 33-week pregnant mom, expectant mom, with a pre-adoptive family, and that's it. Then they're stepping away. They're not talking to the expectant mom. They're not talking to the pre-adoptive parent. They're just here. You guys found each other. You can talk. And if you want to move forward, great. We made our money. We're stepping away. Part of the reason why this adoptive family came to us is because they had worked with this facilitator before and they learned the hard way that they had to do everything on their own. So they said, well, let me have Pact on my side as well. So even though the expectant parent technically did not come through us, it came through a different facilitator, but that facilitator does nothing. We are stepping in to counsel the expectant parent, to talk with her about what her state rules and regulations are going to look like, etc. So the adoptive family is going to pay that fee too because we're still handling all the case management. I'm working with the adoptive family and my coworker is going to be working with the expectant parent. So we're still doing work. So that family is responsible for their case management fee too. Had that match been through a facilitator that does everything and Pact doesn't, we're not involved at all. The only way we're involved is the adoptive family calling me and saying, I got a match through somebody else, please remove my profile. We don't charge the fee too, but since we need to step in this instance, we will charge the fee too. Again, fee 2 will roll over. If you take the baby home and you've submitted your fee 2, but official paperwork still hasn't been signed yet, or they put a hold on it and birth parents change their mind and they want their baby back, or they want a parent, then your fee 2 can roll over. We can refund it back, or you can just roll over and hold on to it there because that adoption did not go through. We do have a needed families sliding scale, so in order to ensure that our fee structure does not make it impossible for families to adopt through Pact, we created our needed families. These are for families whose incomes are below 100K and who fit the profile of needed/in-demand parents to adopt the children we place. Then you can apply this scale to your adoption. Needed families right now would be two-parent African American families and families of color, like in the late 20s, early 30s range. I also do not have any families that have Asian parents. Um, like I said, it is a longer wait time for you, but we also never know. We could get a call of somebody who wants an Indian family or a East Asian family, which we have called, and we actually had to essentially service out and work with another agency to find that family because we just didn't have what the expectant parents wanted. So we do need Asian families. We always need two-parent Black families. I have a ton of interracial couples, so they're not needed at this time, um, unless you're both 25 years old. That is definitely needed. Expectant parents do like to see younger families that are adopting. And then any Latino families that are bilingual. I only have one family right now that speaks Spanish and one family that they're Latino, but they don't speak Spanish. So we would love to have more Spanish-speaking families. We had two, they had placements. So that is definitely some needed families right now. Like I said, we don't do transracial placements that often. So transracial families are not needed. They're going to look at a longer wait time. The one piece, though, that we've heard from expectant parents before is they recognize that the white, specifically white families that are adopting through Pact, they recognize that they've done a lot more work than any of the other white families they're looking at. So they're like, I would consider them because they've done a lot of work. But they don't have any children yet, or they're raising a child by birth who's also white. So they're a little hesitant to do that. Where we have seen placements happen for transracial families is when they are also a family of color, just adopting a cross race, or if they're a white family, they're already parenting a child that will share the race of the other child. The the situation where the little girl, I think I'm pretty sure it was cocaine in her system. I did that whole adoption. The expectant mom wanted a Black family, a two-parent Black family, um, and she wanted all these other specifics. And I had two-parent Black families. I had families with one Black parent that I brought to her, and she didn't choose any of them. She chose the family that was already parenting a Black child. They were a transracial family that was already parenting a Black child. And she was like, oh, well, they already have a Black kid and they live here in Oakland and they're connected with you and they've done the work and they've got the education. I'm fine with placing with them. So kind of like you being flexible about what might happen within open adoption and relationships ebbing and flowing. Expectant parents are also pretty flexible. They'll tell us, this is the type of family I want. And then we'll show them those families, but then we'll also show them families that might match other criteria. So they might say, I want a two-parent Black family, but I want open adoption, and I want them to live in Richmond, Virginia. If I have a single Black parent who lives in Richmond, Virginia and wants an open adoption, I would still present that family because it's not a two-parent, but they match everything else the expectant parent is looking for. And they might change their mind. And we have had that. We've had to have families that are, I want two-parent only, and then they end up choosing a single parent. I want a family that has no kids whatsoever, and then they end up choosing a family that has a kid by birth. So it can change. It can all change. Adoption is not set. Adoption is not A, B, C, D, E, F, G. You'll see it on one of my next slides. Adoption is, it is not even streamed, something that you can totally control. I've talked about this, but for visual people, this might be helpful. If you're in our placement program only, so you don't do your home study, your pre-placement is 400, or if you're a BCAC transracial family, it's 500. Then you fall on our sliding scale for your case management fees, and that range is 33. Well, the range is 1,000 to 10,000. The range of current Pact families is about 3,300 to 7,000. If you have a home study not through Pact home study, I've seen 2,000 to 3,500. I've also seen 1,500. Post placements through your agency range from 300 to 500 per visit, and there's anywhere from 1 to 4. Typically, it's more 3 to 4 post placement visits. ICPC is that Interstate Compact for the Protection of Children, if it applies. I have seen the range be 500 to 1,000, and I've also seen it on other agency websites as being 3,000 to 5,000. Um, Overall budget above and beyond our case management fees, I've seen the range be 18 to 30. That's kind of the current for our families, but I've also seen it be more like 25 to 55,000. Um, the expectant parent is already connected to another agency. Those fees are going to range from 3,000 to 25,000, sometimes more. The facilitator that if you have to travel out of state, 2,000 or more is usually what my parents will or my families will budget themselves for. If you have a California adoption, so if you're, I'm just going to use one of the families on here. If you're in Santa Cruz and baby's born here at Highland Hospital, you're just looking at gas mileage and possibly staying overnight up in the Oakland area. You don't have to. I have a family down in Fremont. Their son was just born in Sacramento, and they commuted just because they couldn't. Life was a little crazy. One of them stayed with the baby all the time, but they commuted back and forth. So that travel will be a little bit easier. If it's across state lines, you're looking at hotels and having to stay there, possibly rental cars. If you have friends and or family that live anywhere in the country, think about them. Think about who you can tap for. Can we stay with you pre-birth? Once the baby is born, we highly recommend you get a hotel room where it is just you and the baby. If you're a two-parent family, it should just be the two of you and the baby, or babies if they're twins. They happen. If you're a single parent family, it should be just you and the baby. Really important for that initial bonding. Expectant birth parent expenses. So Pact has set up any family that works with Pact, whether you're local or out of state, all families will submit $1,500 towards a birth parent escrow fund at time of activation. So once you're totally legally clear to become a family to bring home a baby, we ask you to submit $1,500 to our birth parent escrow fund. We hold on to that, and that allows us to disperse funds when needed. So if she calls and she needs a bus ticket or a bus pass for the month, that's going to come out to $150. We're just going to pull that from your birth parent escrow. We don't want to have to call you, wait for money to be released, or wait for this and that. So through Pact, we have that. It might be used, it might not be used. Most of my families will they'll have that, and then they'll budget. We can do maybe 2,000 to 2,500. There are other agencies that are doing a lot, and their birth parent expenses are going to be 3,000 or higher. I've got a call from a lawyer where birth parent expenses were going to be like $9,000 because they're buying her an apartment or doing all of this other not sustainable activity. So you never know. Lawyer for terminating of parental rights, that is definitely lawyer-based and going to be needed. Finalization is you can do that on your own to save money, but most people have an infant in their house and they're just like, screw it, I will pay a lawyer to do all the finalization paperwork and go to court and do all of that. And that can range from 1,000 to over 5,000. So we're getting close to 12:30, and I just have my last few slides, which is perfect. Again, any other last questions that are coming in? Things to consider if you're a family that has not been able to have children by birth, then think of this as kind of your pregnancy. Who do you have your heart set on parenting? Are you as excited about adoption as you would be about giving birth if it was something that you would be able to do? What is bringing you to adoption at this time? Like I said, adoption is not ABCD. It's more like XLARJ 257 pound 4. Can you be flexible and can you move quickly? And can you also hurry up and wait, as my director calls it? The waiting period can be really tough. The first half of the process is entirely in your control. I have a family that contacted us in 2014. They still don't have a home study done, and they still email me every few weeks or every few months to say, I'm on it, Katie, I'm coming around, I'm coming around. It's been 4 years. So if they suddenly did everything and they went active tomorrow, and then they call me in December and say, Katie, I've been waiting for almost 5 years, I don't have anything. No, You've been waiting for about 6 to 5 months. It took you 4.5 years to get to this point. So the first part is totally in your control. How quickly you're going to do your paperwork, how quickly your home study is going to take, stuff like that. The point where you go active and can legally bring a child home, that is not in your control. It's not really about you anymore, as we say on this last one. Your child comes first. This is not in your control anymore. Um, you could be waiting 6 months, you could be waiting 2 to 3 years. The current average wait time for anybody for domestic infant adoption is about 2 to 3 years. Single parents, LGBTQ parents, and parents over the age of 45 tend to see a longer wait time. Um, Transracial families through Pact program will see a longer wait time. Families that want to gender select, which you can't do through Pact, but through other people possibly, will see a longer wait time. Families that want a completely, totally healthy baby only exposed to water, kale, and tofu are going to wait for years. Families that want no mental health or limit, like no exposure, but some mental health, like it's going to be a long time. I'm not saying be open to absolutely everything. If you know you can't parent, if you know you're a white parent and you can't parent a black child exposed to cocaine, don't tell me that you can. We're looking for families for children that are ready to prepare, to support, to do what it is they need to do for that child. So you want to think about that. I also tell most of my families when they go active to give it like pregnancy about 9 months before you freak out about I need to give you more money, or I need to open my parameters, or I need to be open to babies that have sickle cell, or I need to be open to babies that have this and this. You want to give yourself, I tell families 9 months to a year before you start changing anything. Um, it's going to take a while. The placements are low, um, which is a good thing. They are still happening, but you definitely need to prepare for about 2 to 3 years. Could be more, could be less. Moving forward, we invite you to envision yourselves as parents. Imagine that your child is watching everything. So they're watching you watching this webinar, they're watching you calling other agencies, they're watching you exploring sites on the internet. They're watching the choices you make about this process, because all of it is about their story. Their story doesn't start when they come home to you. Their story is everything in utero, you going on this journey. Try to imagine your child as an adult and how they might feel about your choices down the road. Becoming a parent is about you. Being a parent is about your child, and your journey is just beginning. So if there are any last questions, please send them through now. My last slide was just a little example of your Dear Expectant Parent letter. You might hear it be called a letter, be called a profile. They're basically the same thing. We have all of our families start letter on the front page, and then the rest of the pages are pictures, and this is our family, and these are our activities, and this is our synagogue, and this is our whatever we do. This is just a little example. I like it because less is more. It is brief, but it gets to some important points. We respect and admire that you are considering open adoption. So already this family is not afraid to say open adoption. That's what we're here for, and we're glad that you're considering that. They say dear expectant parents because nobody's a birth parent until their paperwork is signed. So they're not putting any pressure on this single parent or couple that is coming to explore adoption or consider it. And by including the parentheses S, they're not cutting out the father, who so often is cut out. That could be a whole nother webinar because I don't have time to get into that. So dear expectant parents, no unnecessary title of birth parent, and it includes both parents. You'll see a lot of these that say dear birth mother. You're cutting out 50% of the kid. We are excited to become parents. Luke can't wait to be an at-home dad. So they address open adoption. They address that one of them will be at home, an at-home parent. That's super important to expectant and birth parents. They want to know what childcare is going to look like. Nicole has saved up a few weeks of paid leave to spend uninterrupted time, and she has flexibility. We want to know that we look forward to getting to know you and welcome you into our lives in whatever way makes you feel most comfortable. So again, they reiterate open adoption. We're not afraid of it. We welcome you into our lives. So that's just a little snippet. I do have a webinar recording. I usually do one every year. I did it earlier this year, so I can send recordings to Pact families that are interested in that. I help you go through it. There are professional sites that can help you as well. Um, so that's kind of more when families become Pact clients or Pact waiting families, as we call them, but just a little glimpse for you. So unless there are no other final questions, I can stay on for a few more minutes. Oh, I did not put it on this slide, but my email is my first name, Katie, at pactadopt.org, just like our website. You can also go on the website and you'll see all of us there. It's, for the most part, it's our first name. I'm the adoption social worker. I'm the one that does most of the direct work with the pre-adoptive parents. So that would be those of you on this webinar or listening to the recording later. So I am who you would want to reach out to. My coworker is going to be going on maternity leave. So I'll step into the role of working with expectant parents and some pre-adoptive parents. We are hiring a part-time temporary social worker to help with home studies and working with our pre-adoptive families. But I will basically be the main point who you're going to be talking with and submitting paperwork to. So Katie does not have to be capital. It's usually all lowercase at pactadopt.org. And you can send any further questions that you might have. So I don't see anything else coming through. I'm going to go ahead and close out our webinar event. And like I said, it's being recorded. Even though you were here, it will be sent out again if you need to share it with your spouse or parenting partner, or you want to share it with your family or friend or somebody else you know who's interested in adoption, or if you need to go back to just what did Katie say about that point. And thank you so much for joining us.